Okay. All right. So the good news is everybody should have at least gotten feedback for the exam. And the good news is, hey, nobody failed, nobody got a bad grade. However, don't be disappointed if you needed to rewrite some things. That's pretty typical. If you don't have to rewrite it, hey, great job. So I want to spend the first part of this meeting talking about the exam and reviewing some things. And then I want to spend the second part going over REBT a little bit and answering questions about either of them. So let's see. First of all, let's look at the exam itself and go over the different parts, and then we'll go over the answers. The good part is that at this point, between the outline I gave you in your feedback, everybody, I gave an outline, and the exam sample answer that I posted on D2L, you should all have the answer to this exam. So if you need to rewrite it or, add to it or redo a section, you should actually have the answer between the sample exam I gave and the outline. You just have to put it in your own words, okay? Now, with the exam, if you have to rewrite something or resubmit it, I did not give you a grade because my goal is to give everybody full credit. And, because I don't really care about the grade, I just want you to understand the information and be able to apply it. So even though maybe my feedback was very specific or, I don't know, talking about specific details, you can incorporate whatever I said into your rewrite and get an A. So that's my goal. It's not to give you a bad grade or even give B's. I want you to be successful. So try not to feel bad if you have to rewrite it. Most people have to rewrite something in this class. That's part of the learning process, So let's look at the exam first, and then we'll look at the answers. And I will go over parts of it again. I'm not going to spend an extensive amount of time on it because I think I wrote really long answers for feedback. But let's see. Okay, so this is the exam. That you all took. And I just want to highlight certain parts of it. Let's see. Okay, so each case essay should have 3 parts. Okay, and this is the outline for each part. So a discussion of the case using theoretical concepts, extensive terminology, developmental outlook, if that's included. Use examples applied to the client. Each theory looks at the case differently. This section is about case history and what brought the client to counseling. So most individuals who had a problem with this first section probably talked about the theory, but didn't actually apply it to the client. So they might say something like, if I was going to use person-centered theory, I might fill in the blank, whatever it is. And then they went over different parts of the theory. They'd say the counselor or therapist needs to be genuine, they need to have accurate empathic understanding, and they need to have basically unconditional positive regard and acceptance. And, and you're going to provide a safe environment with Sam, and on and on and on. But it's really talking about, if you had a problem, you really talk too much about the theory, and you could put any name in there for Sam. So what I want you to do is actually talk about how would you do these things with Sam specifically. And then you should apply the theory in this first section. What is going on with Sam? Why is Sam coming to therapy? And we'll go over that for each section, and use the terminology from the theory. The second part, the therapeutic session. This is when you actually have a session. And remember, in class, I said, it's not just two techniques. You don't just say the two techniques that I would use. You're talking about a session as an entire session. So you're going to process some things, you're going to talk about some things, and then you're going to use a couple techniques. The last one, this is the part a lot of people had problems with. I didn't have anybody rewrite their exam if they only had a problem with the 8-week treatment plan, because everybody has problems with that, the first exam. And it's usually not detailed enough. They might say, oh, I'm going to use, name a couple techniques over the next 8 weeks. A lot of times they'll set goals. But in reality, we need some details, and we need to know how you're going to apply these things to Sam. How's it going to be laid out over the next few weeks? How are you going to facilitate awareness, which will result in growth and positive change for this client, specifically Sam? So it needs to be applied to Sam, not just in general. And, use this. There's enough information in this case study that you shouldn't have to make things up. Now, so let's talk about this a little bit, the exam. I think what I realized after reading a lot of exams, not everybody's, some people read everything, watched everything, attended everything, but quite a few individuals must not have been watching some of the videos or reading the supplemental materials, because I kind of outlined the answers for each one of the theories in the class meeting when I opened up the exam. So for instance, we talked about how the first section is in the past. You can talk about the dad. Second section, I said, focus on Sam in the present. This is not a time to deal with the father and all the history. We're going to work with Sam and change in Sam. We talked about what not to do in a role play, what to do in a role play, and that's in one of the recorded Thursday meetings. So we kind of outlined what to do with each question. A lot of times people might look at the book, but they didn't look at supplemental material like WDEP. I provided a handout. We talked about using WDEP in the session. So you can't just say, I'm going to use WDEP in the next 8 weeks. You have to use WDEP in the session. So I see you using WDEP. I need to know that you understand how to use it. You can't just say you're going to use it in the next 8 weeks and not tell me how. But we went over all this. So then, D2L gives me stats on basically what videos people watch, what parts of the shell they accessed, how long they watched a video. Did they watch the whole thing? Did they just open the video and watch 2 minutes of it and then exit? And some people really need to watch the lectures. They need to watch this class if they can't attend. I'm probably preaching to the choir because you're all here right now. So, I might not be talking about you. And you need to read the supplemental material. I wrote a chapter on Rogers that talked about a lot of things that Corey didn't talk about. I included a WDEP handout that you were supposed to use in the session. So there's a lot of things there that may not have been accessed, read, or watched. But, hey, that's enough of me telling you what you should do as a student. So let's look at the answer, okay? And this is my checklist for the answer, and I gave this to you in your feedback. So what I did was everybody got this part of the feedback. It's the outline. And individually, I added a couple paragraphs for you as an individual. So everybody got the outline, but everybody also got a personal response that began right here after the first sentence. And it was usually pretty long. But let's go over the basic things. And I kind of reviewed basically what goes into each section. That's what I was looking for each section. How would the theorist view the client's presenting issue in terms of the theory? How would you use the theoretical terminology to describe the case history? Second part, what would a counseling session look like? Using the theory beyond techniques. How would at least 2 techniques play out in the session? Can't just write, I'm going to use, or if I was a therapist, I would use reflection and clarification. You actually have to use it. So, you could say, Sam expressed the feeling of sadness, and I reflected, Sam, you say you're sad. That's reflection. And then Sam reacts to that. So you actually have to tell me how you use the techniques and apply them to Sam specifically. How would you process the techniques with the client? You have to talk about the techniques. Awareness should occur. And you can't give Sam the answer. Sam has to come up with that awareness themselves. You facilitate the awareness. Sam comes up with the answers. That way, Sam owns them. And then that leads to change. And they try out the change. And then you decide, okay, what am I going to do with this specific client? How am I going to do these things in the next 8 weeks? And then I added basically a little outline and a descriptive paragraph of what needs to be included for each of your exam questions. So, Rogers, question 1. You should mention genuineness, unconditional acceptance, accurate empathic understanding. These are needed to be a good therapist, but they're not techniques. Remember his techniques, and I went over this list when we reviewed the exam before spring break. Good techniques to use: reflection, paraphrase, summarization, clarification, pointing out incongruencies. You can use any 2 of those. Probably my favorite for an exam would be reflection. That's pretty straightforward. Pointing out incongruencies. That gives you a lot to talk about. And you should talk about and process congruence and incongruence, the real self and the ideal self, and coming up with future treatment plans. So basically, what would Rogers say about self-acceptance, genuineness, Sam's need to please his father? And this is in the history part. Sam's career, the need for a relationship, in the case history. In the therapeutic section, reflection and paraphrase come before clarifying and summarizing. Gently confront the incongruencies in his life. He'll then realize that he strives for his father's acceptance rather than accepting himself and living a genuine life. He needs unconditional acceptance of self, not conditional. I personally think that Sam might like going back to school so he can work in a dinosaur museum, paleontology. That's just what I think he might like. On a deeper note, though, the underlying issue is that Sam is not living a genuine life because he thinks he needs to meet the expectations and conditions of others in order to be accepted. This is why he's in a job he finds unfulfilling and cannot establish a meaningful relationship. Rogers would help him to become more self-aware so that he could accept himself for who he really is and live a genuine life. If we're not genuine, how can we have a healthy relationship? Eventually, our real selves come out. And you can all ask me questions. Well, I'll just go over this and then you can ask me anything you want. So, pearls and Gestalt, the layers of the personality should be discussed in relationship to unfinished business. And most of that is discussed in the history, but you can use 2 experiments to process it in the session. How do you facilitate movement? How do you deal with unfinished business? The client probably is using some type of contact resistance. And we talked about, I gave some examples in class of basically a role play that doesn't talk to his father. That's just venting anger. That doesn't promote any movement or change. He's already angry with his dad. What good is it expressing that in a role play? What does help, though, is if you have Sam have a dialogue between his phony self and his authentic self. And that's what we talked about doing in class, and then have them dialogue back and forth. So Sam's stuck living in the phony stage of his personality because he wanted to gain his father's acceptance as a young man. He feared his father's rejection. Now, as an adult, He's internalized these conditions for self-acceptance. He's stuck in the phony layer because he doesn't believe other people accept him for who he actually is. And he fears rejection, which moves into the phobic layer of his personality. He's also using contact resistances. You can pick any one you want. There's a list of them in the notes. How would you help him move through these layers of the personality to get unstuck so that he can become genuine and fulfilled? What experiments will you use to deal with the unfinished business so he can remove this mask, the person he pretends to be? He needs to accept himself for who he really is unconditionally. So we're seeing a theme here. Each of these theories is getting to a similar issue with Sam in a different way, using different terminology. Because Sam's problem doesn't change just because you use a different theory. It's just a different way of getting at that problem and helping to facilitate positive change. And then we have Glasser, choice theory, reality therapy. Focusing on, he believes everybody needs a good relationship. But in the history part, you can process the 5 basic needs, what needs are being met, what's not being met. Of course, you're going to find out that he doesn't have a relationship and he doesn't have a fulfilling job. You need to mention what is his quality world. What choices did he make that were poor choices that resulted in unmet needs? And what was the reason behind those choices? How do we want to change those choices? And then remember, in the session, you're just really going to apply WDEP to relationships and work. Address the needs that aren't being met, and then follow through with future treatment. Sam needs a relationship, love and belonging. He needs a fulfilling career. WDEP is the 4-part technique you're going to use. Let's see what else I wrote. Yeah, that's about it. And the sample exam, and there's more than one way to do this. Remember, there's not just one right way for this exam. Here's the recorded meeting and exam instructions. I go over a little outline for it. And let's see where the exam is. That's in Theories, Class 8, Theory Exam 2 Sample. And these are samples of answers by students. So they're not perfect. They might not do it exactly the way I explained in my feedback, but they're good enough. And I want you to be able to see different ways that people process these exam answers. All right, that's my spiel with the exam. Now, any questions, problems? The other thing is, if you don't agree with me, you can debate me. And if I think you put up a good enough argument, I will give you the benefit of the doubt. But really, between the sample exam and the outline I gave you in feedback and any personal recommendations that I made for you, you should have a pretty good answer to each question that you can use if you have to rewrite anything. All right, questions, comments, you need help with anything. Remember, my goal is for you to get an A. Nothing. You're good to go.
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
I've been just like really enjoying the course. Like this is probably my favorite course I'm taking so far. Um, everything's been
Butter
like
me
really,
up left and right. Go
um,
ahead.
yeah, everything's been like really interesting and I've really been enjoying like doing it all. So
Great. I hope that continues. What else? All right. So I think try to have, if you have to add something or rewrite something, try to have it in sometime in the next 2 weeks. My main goal is for you not to be working on 2 exams at a time. So you definitely have to have it in before you start the next exam, basically. Because it's confusing working on 2 exams. So if you have to rewrite something, try to have it in before the next exam. All right. You can email me with any questions if you don't want to ask for them in class. But let's look at REBT. I'm going to watch, I have to watch the student videos that were submitted, but I'll give you feedback on those through D2L. Just took me a little longer to grade the exams than I had anticipated. You do have a discussion board this week, but so if we talk about CBT and REBT, they're very similar. All right. So most studies, most journal articles use CBT. That's not because it's a better theory. The reason for that is the difference between Aaron Beck, who wrote CBT, and Ellis, who created REBT. So Ellis was like a self-help guru. He wrote tons of little pocket paperback books on any kind of problem, on relationships, on you know, basically how to live a more positive life. And of course, he used REBT in every topic. But that was his thing, you know, writing these little self-help books, and he became famous for them. But Beck, who came up with CBT, he wrote academic articles and academic books. And that's why most people use CBT. Another interesting reason is that Beck also came up with measurements. So we have Beck's depression inventory, we have Beck's anxiety inventory, and he came up with these very brief measurements that were easy to use. He wanted to measure the results of CBT. Does CBT work? What's the efficacy of CBT? So he came up with these measurements. And he thought that anxiety and depression were two areas that CBT could really help. So he wanted to use CBT, and he'd have his clients take the inventory before he had sessions with them, and then he'd use CBT with them. He'd have them take the inventory after, and he'd see if there is a positive change. And in almost every case, there was a positive change in the measurement. It helped the client in some way. I use REBT because I found that even though it does the same thing as CBT, deals with irrational thoughts and cognitive distortions, because he uses the ABCDEF technique, clients can understand that. ABCDEF, it's very easy for a client to follow. So, A is the activating event, B is the belief about the event, and C is the consequence of that belief, which is usually a negative feeling. So that's the problem that the irrational thought creates. So ABC is the problem. DEF is the solution. And so D, we're going to debate that irrational thought. We're going to process that irrational thought, and the client is going to realize that it's not logical. It's irrational. And then, so D, debate. E, the effect of the debate is, in my mind, to change the irrational thought to a positive thought. So the irrational thought usually leads to negative self-talk. But once we realize that that thought is irrational, we want to change that negative thought to a positive thought. Unfortunately, people have been thinking these negative things for half their life sometimes. It's not going to change in one session. So we have to help them practice it. And we do that by having them come up with like a one-sentence positive thought instead of that negative, irrational thought. So if maybe my irrational thought is, no one will like me unless I'm perfect. That's the irrational thought. The rational thought is, people need to like me for who I am, and all humans make mistakes. Okay, so that's the positive one. Throughout the week, that negative thought's still going to enter my mind. But I'm going to catch myself. And every time I catch myself thinking that negative thought, I'm going to substitute that positive, more logical thought for it. So, I might be in a situation, I might be sitting in class, and I might think, oh, Grafton's not going to like me unless I get a perfect answer on this exam. But I'm going to catch myself. I'm going to say, no, people need to like me for who I am. I'm just human. Humans aren't perfect. Grafton's going to like me anyway, and Grafton will. So, you have to think about it, and you have to catch yourself when you start thinking about those negative things that they're irrational. Substitute that positive self-talk, and then the result is going to be F, a new feeling that is a more positive feeling. I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm not going to be so judgmental. I'm okay. So I actually teach clients what A stands for, what B stands for, what every letter stands for. Why not? It's no secret. I want them to learn A, B, C, D, E, F so that they can employ it. Even after counseling, maybe they come up with another irrational thought. Then they can apply this on their own. They don't even need me to do it. So it's kind of like teaching them a skill, this technique, that they can employ at any part of their life. They could even help other people do it. So it's a pretty straightforward theory and technique. It's also a brief therapy. It probably won't take more than 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks. And so that's the positives. People usually see a positive change as a result of it. So I usually incorporate REBT with some broader theory. The reason for that is I might be able to help a client with an irrational thought, and they might be able to substitute a more positive, logical thought. But that doesn't address the reason that they have these negative thoughts. There's a deeper reason that is creating these negative thoughts. And so personally, I like REBT, but I use it as part of or in combination with some other theory that can get at some deeper issues. I don't think CBT really corrects some deeper diagnoses. A lot of tests might show that it does. Like you might read a journal article and you might say CBT works with. Well, what I found with those articles is that they're a one-time shot. They go to therapy, they use CBT or REBT with a serious diagnosis, and the client usually says, yeah, it helped me. But then in 6 months, new symptoms arise because you've never dealt with the deeper issue. You've only dealt with the symptomology. So I usually find that more serious issues, more serious diagnoses recur after time if you only use cognitive therapies. So I like it. I like it with phobias. I like it with irrational thoughts. I like it as part of another treatment, a more comprehensive treatment, if you're dealing with more serious issues and diagnoses. So, yeah. Questions about, let's talk about Gloria. So you got to see Ellis and Gloria, and Ellis is very different than than Rogers or Pearls. So Ellis does a lot of talking, and he might not use the most diplomatic language either. He might say, Gloria, go open your big mouth and whatever. I probably wouldn't say that to a client. But what did you all think about Ellis's techniques with Gloria compared to Pearl's or Rogers? What do you think?
I definitely thought it was weird that he talked so much and made very bold assumptions quickly.
Yeah, he kind of, I don't think he has a big ego. I think he was compensating for a lack of ego. And in this situation, his theory allowed him to be an expert at something. And, I always liked the thing that when he was younger, he went to the New York Botanical Gardens, and because he was shy, he tried to get a date with 100 different people, and he never got a date, but he no longer feared rejection. So there's that. What else? Anything else? Would you like to be a client of Ellis? Out of the three, what was your favorite? Pearls, Rogers, or Ellis? Who would you like to be a client of?
Probably Rogers for me.
Up, Sarah, I couldn't hear you. You're not muted, but I still couldn't hear you. So there's something going on. So that's okay. You can type it in the chat if you want. Yeah, I mean, I personally like Rogers. But I think I have a personal need for unconditional acceptance and positive regard in my life, because maybe I didn't have that growing up. So now I'm really attracted to that quality. So but I think everybody's drawn to a different style, a different personality. I've had different students like Pearls, different students like Ellis. Gloria kind of liked Ellis because she wanted direction and he told her what to do. So I think it's your Wi-Fi. You'd like Rogers too. Unconditional acceptance. That's it. People don't realize how far just being present for another and accepting another person can really go in a therapeutic relationship. Some people have never really experienced that in their lives. So it's also why it's important to have good ethical boundaries with clients, because they don't know how to take that positive relationship, even though it's a professional relationship.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
you said Gloria felt that Pearls helped her the most. Yeah. But who was her favorite? Is there a video that lets her talk about the three, or?
Yes, it's at the very end, but they didn't include it in this YouTube video that I found. So they have like a 10-minute thing, and they said, well, which one did you feel more comfortable with? Which one do you feel like you grew the most? And she said she felt most comfortable with Carl Rogers, but she felt that she grew the most emotionally and psychologically with Pearls.
I'll definitely have to watch that.
I have to find it. Yeah, I mean, it's not on the video I gave you for some reason. It's not
Even on the long one.
Yeah, I didn't. Let's see if it is. If it is, we'll watch it. No, it ends with Ellis. Yeah. They didn't add that additional part to it. So I have to find it someplace. All right. What are your questions about CBT or REBT? All right. If you are rewriting part of your exam and you have questions, just email me. All right. But between the outline and the example of the exam, I think you should be able to do it. All right. Yep. Don't forget your discussion board this week. And I think it just asks you about the Gloria tape, All right. We will see you next week. Have a good one.